This is the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and on each episode, I'm going to help you get savvy to allow you and your business to grow. We'll be focusing on the 3 elements that lead to business success: your mindset, your processes, and your skills. Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy, and I'm your host, Mark Terrell. Today we are going to be talking about EOS. And now, if you've never heard of EOS, then after the next 30 minutes or so, you'll be far more enlightened, because it's actually something that I think everybody that's running a business should be aware of. Whether you choose to make use of it is another thing completely, but we're going to dive into that. This is the Get Savvy Show. If you like to check in with the previous shows, then you can do that at the Reluctant Leader Academy YouTube channel, where I've had a number of guests talking about all sorts of topics around leadership and how you can actually get the best from your business. So without further ado, I shall introduce our guest today. Our guest today is Brandon Harris. Welcome, Brandon.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Mark.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Before we get into the conversation, as regular viewers know, first of all, give you a little bit of an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background. Then we're going to dive into what motivates you, and then we're going to go into the topic. So first things first, then, tell us a bit about your background, Brandon, and what you do.
No problem. Well, I was born into an entrepreneurial household. My dad started, developed and sold the business you may see around the UK is now called Flowgas, a bottled gas business. So I was used to that growing up, and I started my first real business when I was 25. We made giant cookies for a living, of all things, and spent 3 years building that business to be a leading wholesaler, manufacturer of giant cookies, all sorts of flavors. We caught the eye of a much larger food producer having learnt all the ups and downs of trying to grow a small entrepreneurial business. And we sold. Then I went back into industry working for others for a short while, a number of different industries. I'm lucky enough to have been able to see a wide range of things that are out there. And the draw to do my own thing again was very strong. So, about 21 years ago, I started my first gym business in Brighton and Hove. That was a great success, eventually becoming one of the busiest clubs in the country. We had 3,500 members in less than 8,000 square feet. Anyone that knows gyms will know that's pretty busy, with over 120 classes a week. And I was able to use that as a springboard to grow, develop, and sell many other fitness and health related businesses, spin studios, HIIT studios. We developed a couple of concepts, and I had a fantastic 20-year run. About 4 years ago, I was introduced to EOS. A friend of mine sent me a copy. He just started implementing with a professional, and it changed my life. I thought, at last, here is a guide to doing what I've always wanted to do, but been unsure how, that's aimed at smaller entrepreneurial businesses. So I self-implemented, and the biggest thing I learned was to really let go. We call it now letting go of the vine. And I let my leaders really lead. So I really was able to back off all the decision making, let them run the parts of the business they were better than me able to do. And in the end, that led me to decide to sell the business. I felt as though I'd taken my gym business experience as far as I wanted to, and I sold in late 2019, which was just good luck. And I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do afterwards, but I thought coaching would be in there somewhere. And it was quite obvious once I'd realised there was a living to be made as a professional, that EOS would be the centre of that. And that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months, thoroughly enjoying it, building a business over COVID. And I've been privileged enough to work with 11 teams now, and my 12th starting next week.
Fantastic! What a great story, and it's good to see that you've learned a lot from what I'm guessing from running those businesses and the things that you wish you had, and EOS I guess is one of those things that you wish you had earlier on in your business. Similar to I never really had any operating system to work to, and that's when I read the book that you sent me, which was Traction at the time, and I was looking through that thinking, oh, if only I had this 20 years ago. Anyway, we're going to delve a bit more into EOS in a while, but first of all, we're going to look at your motivators and what motivates you, Brandon. So you've completed a motivational map, and this is the part of the show where we dive into what actually drives you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. At the moment, the important thing to remember is that motivations change. So when you completed this, Brandon, which was not that long ago, the number one motivator was Searcher, which was about making a difference, doing something worthwhile. Expert was the second and most important motivator, which was being a specialist in what you do, having a specialist knowledge around something. And thirdly, the Builder, which is the money and material satisfaction drive. So actually being well rewarded for what you do is important. So the question I ask my guests when they come on is, just tell us how you see these three motivators showing up in the way that you run your business.
I will. Funnily enough, now I see them like that on the screen, it makes them very clear. And it also makes them very clear how they really match what I'm doing now. Because in EOS, we have our core values and our sort of way of working. And the real reason we all tend to get out of bed in the morning is stated like this. We want to work with people we love, doing work that we love, make a big impact, be fairly rewarded, and have time for other passions. And that's something the vast majority of people that do what I do around the world, about 460 of us now, follow. And in a way, you could call it the EOS life. So how does it show up? Well, we really make a big difference from day one when we go and start with a team. I work with leadership teams, so that's typically the integrator in the UK, probably known as MD or general manager, the visionary, if there is one in the company, which may well be the founder, the person with all those ideas. They're quite different people. Mm-hmm. And the leadership team, which we sort of define as the people that lead a function. So we divide the business up by functions, typically sales and marketing, operations, finance, to name three. And I'm pleased to say I did a focus day yesterday locally, and you make an impact the day you go in. You get the team to embrace the level 10 meeting from next week. We've created an accountability chart, which is like an organizational chart on steroids. And we create their first scorecard, which you might know as KPIs. So from day one, they're off and changing the way they run their business. So that's the impact and the meaning and difference that I see. Mastery comes from me studying EOS, having weekly interactions with our professional community, and constantly reading. You can't really see them there, but I can assure you there's a pile of 14 books that I'm currently planning to read. And I get through about one a week because we all believe that you've really got to keep yourself up to date. But EOS is a complete proven system. So it's just extra information to add context, meaning, and experience and examples. And then the builder, we get very well paid for our days, but we add value and have an amazing guarantee. So if I don't add value on the day, our clients don't pay us. And, I don't think you can say fairer than that. We hold no one to contracts, only doing one day at a time. So I am very well rewarded, but only when I offer value. And that's my number one passion.
Yeah. Good stuff. That's interesting. I mean, I looked at them and it just seemed to make sense. I mean, making a difference is what drives a lot of people, but it's obviously different for each person. Making a difference and finding something worthwhile can obviously mean a lot of different things for different people. The expert drive, being a specialist, and you're obviously using a specialist system, which is obviously solves a particular important problem within a business. And the builder one's interesting because sometimes when you have builder and searcher in your top three, then there is a little bit of conflict in there because you want to be able to, maximize your return, but also make a difference. And sometimes that can cause tension, not always, but sometimes it can be. And it's interesting how you've summed that all up really nicely in that what you do is, it's obviously being well met in what you do. And that's the important thing. Great stuff. So let's go back and start to delve into what EOS is. You've sort of mentioned that you came across EOS when you're running a business, and now you're using EOS as in a different way. So let's just want to tell us a little bit about how that works with regards to the system and how you implement it.
Sure. Well, a lot of people don't even know what EOS stands for, so I'll get that out there straight away. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which has nothing to do with computers or anything like that. It's just a complete, proven way to run an entrepreneurial business. And our target market is agnostic of industry, but it's 10 to 250 members of staff typically. Can be less, can be more. But that's our sweet spot. And the really important thing there is the psychographic of the people that want to work with us. So we put EOS out there by talking, sending books, testimonials, and once you've built up a clientele, you usually get your future clients from that group telling others and allowing you to send books to their contacts as an example. So what I've experienced is you can't sell EOS. You can put it out there and respond when people raise their hand. And they raise their hand because they resonate with what we do, which is helping them stop reinventing the wheel. And Gino said to me last year that he built EOS for plumbers. That might seem a little odd, but funnily enough, there are plumbers that do use it. But it's a great analogy because when a plumber has perhaps learnt his trade and goes out on his own or her own and gets busy, it's quite possible they might get one or two or three other plumbers in vans. And before you know it, they have a salesperson and a couple of people back at the office and a bookkeeper, and the plumber's not plumbing anymore. He's running a business. So he's managing and leading. But of course, in the main, and please, plumbers out there, don't take this personally, but they've generally not been taught how to do that. So they reinvent the wheel of getting the best out of a growing entrepreneurial business. And as a simple example is EOS can help that enormously because we provide the framework and the structure and the systems, and it's a complete system. You don't have to look elsewhere. And really, what we're doing is helping people manage all the human energy in their business. And we do it by strengthening 6 key components. So I'll happily go through those.
Yeah, we will do in a minute. I'm just going to go back to what you said about the computer sort of analogy, because I've heard Gino talk about that analogy, and that every computer will not, well, a computer is pretty dumb unless it's got an operating system. So I think the analogy is quite useful in that a business only becomes a business when you have a system that actually makes it run. And the classic example is like a plumber. He's a plumber until he starts employing people. And then you need a system that allows that business to grow. So I think it's a great analogy. And the interesting thing, again, listening to Gino, is that he, like me, was involved with a family business. And he actually was what he calls, and I don't want you just to talk about the integrator and visionary as well, before we get into the six parts, and talk about the importance of that, because I really resonate with that. And he talks about where he was the integrator and his father was the visionary. And as time went by, that changed. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that visionary and integrator scenario?
Yes, certainly. And I was witness to this personally because in the end, it was quite apparent to me that I was the visionary in my gym business. Visionaries tend to work at 30,000 feet, helicopter view, big relationships, probably don't like getting into the weeds, difficult conversations with staff, the nitty gritty, the day to day. That's work better done by integrators. And they're very different people. But in a small growing business, it's often that the founder owner is sitting in both seats. And it can be very frustrating. Part of the implementation process is to call out if there is a genuine visionary on day one and to elevate them to that visionary seat. Define what 5 key roles they have, which will be very different from the 5 key roles of an integrator. And using Dan Sullivan's strategic coach term, elevate them to their true unique ability. And it can be incredibly freeing to realize you no longer have to do the nitty gritty. Someone is there to run the day to day, and you can vision, plan for growth, keep tabs on the industry that you're in, and manage big relationships, guiding and leading the company to a common vision. It's a very freeing situation when we get to that point.
Yeah. And I think we talked about motivations and the importance to realise that motivations change. And in line with that, I think the roles that you prefer will change as well. So you can, when you join a business, you might be more suited to be an integrator, but you then might become more visionary as those motivations for growth and become more important to you. So I see that's
funny you say that, Mark. That we find that that's not really the case.
Right.
Inbuilt in your DNA, you typically are a visionary or an integrator.
Right.
But you certainly have to do both roles because there really isn't enough money, time, and availability to hire others at the beginning of a business. And they say that visionaries perhaps make up 5 to 10% of the population, whereas integrators make up less than 5% a true integrator.
Right.
So they're hard to find really good people. We have a assessment within some of the EOS books that really guide you to whether you are a visionary or implementer. I'm very happy to pass those to you to pass out to anybody that requests them, if that would be helpful. They're free tools.
Yeah, and the book to talk about that in quite detail is Rocket Fuel, isn't it? Yeah.
It most certainly is. That's in the Traction Library, we call it, and that's all about the relationship between a visionary and integrator, the two people that really lead a business.
Yeah, really, really good. Okay, great stuff. So we've been through that, talked about that. So yes, let's talk about those 6 components that you mentioned, which make up the model, the EOS model.
Yeah, sure. Well, we try to keep things simple, and that's what we hear all the time. And understand that if you're going to get your operating system, your way the leadership team works throughout your company, right down to the workers on the shop floor, the cleaners, and everybody in between, then it has to be simple, because complexity builds in a growing business so quickly. So we say that to become one of the top 5% companies in your industry, you need to strengthen 6 key components. And they are vision, getting everybody on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get them. A people component, getting everybody to be right people, right seats. Again, not one of our terms, but pulled from Jim Collins' work. A data component, all about running your business on facts, figures, hard data, not subjective emotions that often drive decision making in an entrepreneurial business. And then we've got issues. All businesses have issues, and we help you set them up and deal with them at their root for the long-term greater good of the business. Then we have process. So important to get process inbuilt to make sure you get scalability and consistency. And I pray that everybody listening understands the importance of that in a growing business. That will make it more fun, easier to manage. And lastly, but not least, under vision for a reason, traction. The way in which we get your vision worked upon every day, every week, every month to ensure wherever you look in the business, your vision is being implemented on a day-to-day basis. And we believe if you get to 80% strong or better in all of those 6 key components, our work is done.
Yeah, brilliant. So we haven't got time to really go in detail in obviously all 6. So I want to go back to the process. And the reason being that recently I was involved in a little bit of a conversation, I think it was on Facebook, where someone was talking about processes. And I said, what you've got to remember is if you think about McDonald's, the reason why McDonald's has obviously grown to the size it is all over the world is not because of the quality of its products. It's because everything is their process, isn't it?
It most certainly is. You know what you're getting when you go and get a McDonald's. And I even worked there for 6 months when I was a lot younger, as did my own 19-year-old son for about 3 months. So I've got personal experience. It's not the quality of the burgers. But to answer your question about process in an EOS environment, again, we simplify things, and it's all about documenting, simplifying, and getting those processes followed by all. So we keep it as simple as that, and we have our own methodology for documenting your core processes. So the way it would work would be, as a leadership team, you decide what your core processes really are. Just a handful, probably 6 to 9, tend to make businesses run. HR, sales, operations, finance, customer service, whatever they are for your business. And then we start by documenting 20% of the major steps that will get you 80% of the way there. It's not a replacement for ISO, anything legal that you have to do. They would have to be there as more detailed processes. But in terms of creating the how-to manual for your business, we find that if each of those processes is simplified to that 20/80 ratio, documented and trained, managed, updated as necessary, and followed by everybody that touches even one part of that process, what you've got is a usable document or e-document, not a 500-page SOP manual that we all know gathers dust on a shelf. No one wants or does use it. So we bring it down to the ground as a usable item.
Yeah, that's so important, because once you've got that, you get consistency. People do it the same way every time, and that's going back to McDonald's. You know what you're going to get each time because it's uniform, and everyone does it the same way. And the other one I want to just touch on, conscious of time, is going back to the people one. I noticed behind you, you've got one of the books behind you is Who Not How. I think that's a really very important message for anybody that's growing a business, is about finding who and not how. Do you want to explain a bit more about that?
I'm very happy to. Let me start by saying our belief is about 83% of the issues in your business are going to be caused by people. So the people component is absolutely critical, and we simplify it to two things: getting the right people in the right seats. So we define the right seats by using the accountability chart, which I won't labor today, and we define the right people with a simple tool called a people analyzer. And that contains your core values and the ability of each person to get, to want, and to have the capacity to do that role. And really, it's a very easy scoring system: plus, minus, or plus minus. And if you regularly score everybody in the company, what really happens, and the beauty of the system, is it allows the communication between line manager and their direct reports to be open, honest, and clear both ways, showing the people exactly where they're falling short and exactly where they're performing. And that's something that doesn't often happen in a clear way during people's conversations or even reviews. And so it's all baked into the process. And if you consistently go back to basics and use the people analyzer wisely, what we find is people self-select 90% of the time. And when someone's really understanding your vision, and you do start to live, hire, reward, and review by your core values, people that don't fit disappear.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that obviously you talked about process, and then we talked about the people thing, but there's a process with regards to how you make sure that the right people are in the right seats. And also those people things are linked to the vision. So you've mentioned that the vision and the values are brought down into that people thing, and to make sure that they are living them and getting scored. Do you want to go a little bit more detail on how that scoring works? Because it's almost like a 360, isn't it? Because different people are scoring different people within teams.
Well, you alluded to different parts of EOS linking together. So let me say this: Gino didn't invent any of these tools.
Right.
They've been around for 100 years, and we hope and believe they'll be around for 1,000 more. The nugget and the gold within is how they're put together, and those linkages between the 6 core components and all the tools that we use. So when I say simplified, EOS has already been simplified. So there's no fluff in EOS. You can't remove anything and expect it to work as well as it might. So in terms of the people analyzer, the scoring process is very straightforward. It is actually just done between the people who have direct reports. And it comes under LMA, which we say is leadership, management, leading to accountability. And it happens within a quarterly conversation, which is a chat, a two-way conversation. Leave the paper and pen at home, go for a coffee, and have a meaningful conversation. And if you're the leader, perhaps 80% listening, 20% talking. And the people analyzer is a simple document. You have the person's name, the 3 to 7 core values of your organization, and 3 columns for G, W, and C. And what we're looking for is for each individual to be above the bar, which the leadership team set as the minimum hiring standard. And if there's any negatives there, then a clear plan to get them to be plus minuses or pluses. And in the long run, if you can't get them to be plus minuses or pluses and you stay under the bar, it's 3 strikes and you're out because you don't fit that seat. So, EOS is not a tool to beat people with at all. It's an inclusive system that helps people find the right seat for them. And that will be the right seat for the leadership team as well.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is that, and I'm sure you must have felt this when you were running your business before you come across EOS, is that there's sometimes there's things going on which you can't really put your finger on that aren't quite right, and the way that what you've described there, where the people analyse it, you sort of analyse to a point where it's enough information so you can start to get a feel what it is actually not quite right. And you're not just doing it based on your own, it's other people's opinions. So it almost like points in that direction. So you can start making meaningful, having conversations and then start to move in the right direction, whether that person's in the wrong seat, whether they're just the wrong person, don't fit the culture. I guess that's the important thing, is it's to make sure that everyone has the right attitude and culture for the business, and then also they're doing the right role within the business.
Yeah, what tends to happen in reality is surprising to some people. And we find that when people get into a situation where it's become apparent that they're not in the right seat, as an example, they're incredibly grateful, because often people don't feel they're in the right seat. They're not really doing the right work. Perhaps technology has moved on and they haven't, or something else has changed in their life while they've been in that role. And it can often be a very freeing process for the individual to hopefully be helped by the company move into a right seat, of which there are likely to be many in growing companies. And we only work with growth-minded companies. So it's certainly not a tool for getting rid of a lot of people. But sometimes the more difficult of the two, right people, right seats, is right people. And if they don't fit your core values, we often find, without the leadership team having realized it, they've been causing far more damage than you realize to the culture and environment. Backbiting, siloing, going behind people's backs, to say the minimum. And we often find that when that difficult choice is made on a wrong person, many other people in the organization finally state the elephant in the room and say, oh, I can't tell you how bad it's been for the last 2 years, but they never told us before.
That sigh of relief. Thank God someone's actually realised.
Many people free by removing a wrong person.
Yeah, and I think, just an example of that, you might have someone that's performing well, say maybe someone that's good at the sales, but actually they're not following the company values, and ultimately that's not really showing the right way to do things, and then people start copying that because it's not called out as the wrong way to do things, and all of a sudden your values are out the window, and ultimately everything's going to fall apart eventually, isn't it?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head with that example, because that one will hit you in the pocket. But wrong people can often be high-performing salespeople.
Yeah. But
they become little gods in their own world, and they can do a lot more damage than good in the long run. So you have to make the tough choice.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult for leaders when it does hit them financially. But you're right. If your values don't fit, there's probably nothing you can do in leadership and management to make them fit. These are values you have. You don't force them onto people. You just expose them. And unfortunately, it's not really something you can manage people out of in the main. But there's plenty more people out there that will fit your values and can be high performers.
That's right. It's about persistency and sticking to your guns, isn't it? And eventually it'll come good. Brandon, I really enjoyed our chat. Sadly, the time has flown by, as it normally does with these things. So before you go, can you just give us some pointers as to people where people can find you? There will be some links and all that sort of stuff, which I'll put into the comments and show notes. But what would you like to sort of wrap things up with, and how can they find you?
That would be great. My company is called Elevate Business, but if you just search for my name in LinkedIn, all my contact details are available in the contact section, mobile, email. Happy to talk through this with anyone. One of our core values is help first. And if I can give you some free tools, guide you to get some benefit by doing it yourself, I'd love to. If you'd like to talk further about me being your implementer, I will spend 90 minutes with you and your leadership team at no cost, and I will travel to you to give you a deep dive into what we could do together. Thank you very much, Mark.
Fabulous. Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Brandon. And I hope you have a great day, and I will catch up with you very soon.
Cheers. See you soon.
Great stuff. Well, get in touch with Brandon if any of the things that we've been talked about ring bells for you. I've definitely realised that looking back, some of the things that are in EOS would have made a massive difference if I had just that process to follow, and get in touch with Brandon. But also, as Brandon said, you don't have to get somebody in, you can do it yourself, but it's your choice. So that's the end of this show. If you want to catch up with the previous shows, as you can see the link, you can go to my website. And also, going back to the motivations, if you're interested in actually what drives you, because it's important to know what gets you out of bed in the morning, like Brandon knows now, you can do that by visiting my website, go to the courses, and you'll find a course called How to Stay Energized at Work. And you will be able to buy that at a special price if you put in LinkedIn as your coupon code. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed this episode. And until the next episode, have a great day, and I will see you very soon.